Consent can only be given if you think there are other options. Hey, everybody, welcome to Crime Over Cocktails. I'm Tiffany, your host, and today I'm talking with my guest, Amy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amy Nordhues, and I'm an author and an advocate for adult victims of therapist and clergy abuse.
There is so much of that. I didn't realize how common this was.
I didn't either. I'd heard of clergy abuse. We hear it on the news, especially with the Catholic Church first. But when I went to counseling in 2013, I had never, ever heard of therapist abuse. I'd never heard of a mental health professional grooming and abusing anyone. I mean, I guess I should have thought of that, but you don't hear about it. You don't read about it. And so I thought I was the only one in the entire planet that had, ever experienced that. And I can remember, I think I just typed in therapist abuse online, and I found an organization called TELL, which is Therapy Exploitation Link Line. And they do nothing but offer support and advocacy for adult victims of therapist and clergy abuse. So I reached out to them, and they will email, with you back and forth. And I remember saying, how common is this? Like, there's a whole website set up for it. So is this actually a thing? And she said, oh yeah, we get hundreds of victims a month.
Oh, wow.
Abused in therapy. And the reason clergy is thrown in is a lot of the times it's a counseling mentor relationship person and their pastor. So they're very similar.
Gotcha. Why don't you take us on your journey and how all this happened?
Yeah, I decided to start counseling in 2013 to work on my marriage, to work on parenting. I'd had a lingering depression that I really just couldn't shake over my entire lifetime. And I assumed, stemming from childhood abuse, and I'd had many sexual abusers over my lifetime. So it was kind of like a one last shot, at kind of trying to conquer that depression. I'd tried therapy before, I'd tried antidepressants, and nothing really seemed to work. At the same time, in a year before, in 2012, I had started going to a new church, and I'd started recovery was what I started. Have you heard of it? It's a Christian 12-step group for any kind of struggles. And in that process, I fell in love with this new church, fell in love with the pastor, and found out that this therapist was an elder at this church. So when I decided to start counseling with him, I thought, not only do I have this psychiatrist, this doctor, but I have a therapist and I have a Christian elder. So I felt like I was in really good hands, and I was pretty naive on the spiritual side because I was kind of this new believer in the Christian world, and everything that entails was new to me. So I was a little bit vulnerable in that regard. But so I start the process. He does a weird, more spiritual approach to therapy, which again, probably would have freaked me out, years back, but I was more open to this whole spiritual world. He suggested that, well, first off, that I have multiple personalities, which I knew that I didn't have. I'm a psychology major. I know what that is. I know that I don't morph into different personalities. I think that maybe somebody would have pointed it out,
Right.
And so I was like, what? But several things. I was like so desperate for the help. Everybody loved him. He seemed so knowledgeable and intelligent that I almost was like, you know what? Do you have any better ideas? Like, you haven't been able to beat this depression, and who are you to criticize him? So maybe just be open to it. And so in time, I kind of saw it as like just having trauma trapped at different ages. It's not necessarily that I turned into different people, but in my mind, it was just like, well, maybe it's kind of like that. And that I could
rationalize with.
Because I did have a lot of trauma. And I thought maybe it was just, I thought maybe multiple personalities could be like when you have different emotions trapped at different ages that you haven't processed. So we started the process, and it was super weird when the first part that I came up with. I just imagined myself at age 13. I just picked an age where there was a lot of trauma. I described what was going on in my life. And we went through his little therapy process, which involved prayer and and there were evil spirits attached to these missing parts, which is why I had depression. And yes, people listening probably think, well, you should have run out the door. However, I grew up hearing all about evil spirits. My mom blamed almost everything on evil spirits. And so I was like, you know what? No, like, what do I know? I've had all this anger. Nothing I've tried has worked. So I went ahead with it. So, I mean, even though it sounds crazy, that one I was more on board with. I was like, maybe I do have evil. Like, I was
But
molested
you've
by a
heard it
priest.
your whole life. So
Well, and I was molested by a priest when I was 12. And I'm like, maybe that somehow makes me evil. Like, I don't know. But so we start this process and he wanted to name this part. And I was so embarrassed and so horrified and wanted to crawl into a hole. But I was like, Amy, just pick a name. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And so I did. And we proceed on like this for weeks and months of me just picking a different age and doing this prayer process. He would pray away evil spirits and then he would name them, which was cringy. I'm not going to lie. But in time, I kind of just got used to it. And you know what? I loved the attention. I loved the connect. Or have a father figure, and he was almost a grandfather, really. And so I had become quite attached. So I was willing to, accept kind of weird therapy. And I thought it was helping me. I thought I was getting better. I thought I was feeling better. I didn't realize he was grooming me from day one. The first major red flag for me, I started seeing him in April, was in December. So 8 months or something. He offered to rub my shoulders or my feet for a Christmas present. I was so embarrassed and
that's
so mortified. And all I could hear in my head was like, pick one, Amy, pick one. This is so awkward. Like, just say something. And so sadly, I didn't think no was an option. And I just forced myself. I think I said shoulders. And he came over in a minute. He sat down next to me and touched me. I was like, our feet, 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 just get him away from me. Like I was like, oh my God, this is. And I remember just slinking down in my chair and letting him rub my feet and thinking, oh my God, oh my God. But I didn't have enough self-esteem to trust that my instincts were correct. In other words, my instincts knew that it wasn't normal and I didn't know that there was anything sinister about it, though. I just knew it was weird. And I didn't have the self-esteem to say, your feelings can trump his wishes. Or, in other words, you don't have the right to say no. And heaven forbid you make him feel uncomfortable for making you feel uncomfortable. But that was the reality is that you don't have the right. And, eventually that was no big deal. And I kind of was in the rearview mirror, and I got more and more comfortable with the idea of physical touch because, after he did that, rubbed my feet a few times, then I kind of liked it. And then I felt special, and I thought, we're father-daughter, like he's touching my feet. Like what, and I would just berated myself. Like I had the meanest inner critic that would just say like, you're afraid of everything. Like you're so anxious, like he's touching your feet. Like what bad thing is actually happening to you? And, when you're in these situations, you don't tie the red flags together because you don't know that there's a pattern. You don't know that there's something to be looking out for. So you get over this red flag, and then a while down the road, there's another one, but you don't realize they're connected. So each thing was kind of its own, little shock and like kind of hump to get over. And you, like you said, you rationalize it, blame yourself for being uncomfortable with it. Some grooming makes you feel good. Grooming isn't all like creepy and scary. And I think that's a lot of times what people think when they hear the word grooming. But grooming actually makes you feel amazing and makes you feel special and connected. And, that's part of the love bombing that they talk about. So it's not all a bad thing when it's happening. I mean, it is ultimately a bad thing, but you don't realize that you're walking into a web.
Right.
until you're stuck, until it's too late.
How often did he rub your feet?
I think he did it for like 3 or 4 sessions more. And then I'm frustrated that I picked feet. I'm sure he was hoping for shoulders because it took him quite a while to figure out how to weasel his way back over to my side of the office because I didn't know what was happening. And so the way he pulled that off was I was like real emotional one session, and he came over and sat across from me on an ottoman that was in front of my chair and offered me a tissue and then was sitting there close to me. And then by this time, I think I've been working with him for a year, and I was really attached and really felt really close to him. And and then he started acting like he was uncomfortable, like the way he was sitting because he had had an injury. And so I asked him if he would sit next to me on this oversized chair. So then whenever he made another move, I thought it was my fault. And I thought if I told anyone what he did, that I would have to tell them that it was my idea that he sit next to me. But was it really my idea for him to sit next to me? No, it wasn't my idea for him to come to my side of the office at all. But these predators are masterful at knowing how to make you think it was your idea, at least partly. And so then if you tell, because I couldn't get out on my own. Most of us can't get out of these, away from these predators on our own. But to tell, we feel like we're telling on ourselves. I don't want to say what a loser I was that I asked my therapist to sit next to me. Did I think anything was bad about that? No. But I'm an adult. That's weird. Like, I don't, even if it was, even if he was a good guy and it was okay, I wouldn't want anyone to know that. I would feel stupid, you know?
Yeah, but he was in pain. So you were trying to give him another chair to be comfortable.
Well, I wanted him to sit near me, but of course, he feigned the discomfort, I'm sure, so that's how he weaseled his way over there. And then things just progressed. I saw him for a year and a half. I was really slow to catch on what was, happening. Towards the end, I felt I was in so much distress because I felt like he was trying to lure me into an emotional affair, which I wanted nothing to do with. He's like a grandpa, looking character. And I tried to get him, I thought I could get him that if he saw how much he was hurting me, that he would stop and I could have the safe place back. But I didn't realize the place had never been safe to begin with. I didn't realize that it was all a joke. It was all a sham. It was a playbook he was reading by. I was one of many, because when you're in these situations, you think it's just you. You truly believe that there's just a special connection with you. There's just a special draw towards you. This has never happened with this pastor or therapist ever with anyone else. It's just, or I thought maybe it's something about me that tripped him up. Like maybe he had a weird connection with me that, maybe you just don't see the sinister, evil side because you just can't comprehend that people can be that evil. I just couldn't believe it. And so it went on with me thinking I could fix it, thinking that he would back off from the things he was saying. And then at the very end, I think the last 3 sessions were purely sexual, and I would cry in between each session and beg him to stop. And I still, even when I knew he was hurting me, I thought it was coming from a good place. And being an empathetic person, it's easier for me to forgive, accidentally slipping or, somehow getting his emotions tangled up. I needed to know that it was purely sinister. And it took me till that last session to see that. And that was what allowed me to leave that time and ask for help.
Yeah, that couldn't be an accident. People don't just land there.
What do you mean?
Can't just land on the hoo-ha.
Yeah. And he wanted more for me than I was willing to give, but it was bad enough what he did.
Right.
That was part of what made me run for the hills was, oh my God, he thinks, that I'm going to do X, Y, and Z with him, and that's not going to happen. But enough humiliating, shameful things did happen. And I don't know, I've read about sociopaths. I've seen them on TV and in movies, but I have never encountered one up close. I have never met another human being. I mean, I'm sure I've walked by him in the street and maybe I've met him, but I've never had an interaction with another human being where they actually find inflicting pain on you comical and fun and like for sport. It's shocking.
That's kind of like that BDSM stuff.
Yeah, not for me.
No, not me either.
But so yeah, that's basically, what allowed me to leave was seeing that the whole thing was just a joke to him and he didn't care about me. I mean, I was just trash to him, or someone to use and throw away, I should say. And I decided to turn him in. Well, it takes me a while. At first, I think it's just me. I'm the only victim that he's ever had. I just wanted help getting out. And I went to my pastor and he sat with me during my next session. And that was allowed me to cut the tie and not go back. But it took me a long time to really accept, really get it through my thick skull that there was never a special connection there. Like, it was like you were completely used. It was a joke. And it helped when another victim came forward and we were able to compare notes. And it was like the exact same thing. Same
Yeah,
lines,
yeah. They
same gifts, same everything. I mean, and I even felt myself a little bit feeling hurt because I was like, because part of you cannot grasp that this is really real, that people can really do this to other people, but they can. And like, he had no guilt. It was very easy for him. So yeah, just shocking.
Did he get arrested?
Nope, because therapist abuse is only criminal in a little over half of our states. It is not illegal in Oklahoma. It is not criminally illegal in Oklahoma. In half of our states, it's a crime, and in some states, it's a felony with prison time first offense. So some states are taking it seriously, and some, absolutely don't even consider it. I mean, a senator here in our state, after my case, decided to try to pass legislation for a second time on therapist abuse, and he was only asking for a misdemeanor and like a small fine, and nobody was interested. And it's scary because you go to the doctor, hopefully you have a nurse around, but you go to therapy, it's just you in a enclosed room with another person. And when you encounter a narcissist or charming sociopath, it's pretty easy to get manipulated by someone like that. And you're already in a position where you're supposed to be vulnerable for the therapy to work. It's not like you're out. It's not like you're out having coffee with this person. They're your therapist.
Right.
So you're supposed to open up. You're supposed to let your walls down and trust if you want the process to work. So it's pretty scary. And so what I did was, I eventually told a friend who was a mandated reporter, and she said, I'm going to report him to the medical board. Eventually, I got the strength to do the same. And then the medical board took my case, and I think it took about 9 months, but they eventually allowed him to surrender his license. One of the doctors on the board wanted to demand a trial and take the license from him, but they kind of bantered back and forth about it and decided that it's stressful for the victim, which was me, and we only have one victim and we better not risk it. And we have his license. Let's just go ahead and accept the surrender. So I did learn that it was only the 5th permanent surrender of license that they'd issued in like 20 or 25 years. So that felt good. But still, he was of retirement age. It hardly felt like justice. And so he just pretended to retire and move away. And in time, I felt like I needed more to fight for myself and stick up for myself. So I decided to file a civil suit, malpractice suit, medical malpractice. And I found a fantastic attorney through that same organization, TELL. And he does nothing but represent therapist and clergy abuse his entire career. And that took 3 years, and we were successful. But again, we weren't even really suing the doctor. We were suing his insurance. So was there justice in that? A little. I was glad I did it. It felt like I was fighting for myself, at least. Did it penalize him in any way, except he had to be distressed about it for 3 years? It was just all that was available to me.
Why didn't that girl testify the second time? So maybe it would have been a better case, and it wouldn't have just been you have to forfeit your license.
They knew about her.
Oh.
No, they didn't yet. She didn't come forward yet.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
I didn't meet her yet. Yeah. It was just me. Maybe if there was a second, maybe they would have. demanded a trial, but they warned me that if it went to a trial, that there could be TV reporters in there, that it's going to be, that I could testify via satellite, but it was going to be stressful. But I would have done it even by myself. But I was kind of relieved when they went ahead and let him surrender it. But it's not the same as saying surrendered as having it taken. But nobody even knows unless they go to the court records. Most people probably just think he retired.
Right.
But so anyway, when the other victim did come forward, she did go to the medical board and they said, we've already, this is already a case. And she did join in the civil suit. But again, it's
Right.
maddening because he should be a sex offender. He should have to register as a sex offender. I learned of other victims later. I got to speak to the widower of a victim who was in this doctor's care 20 years ago. He was inappropriate with her and she had committed suicide.
Oh.
I mean, he damaged so many lives and just got to pretend to retire. So it's just really unfair.
I'm sorry, but he's trash. Shame on him because you came to him with secrets that you wanted to help heal. And the only thing he did was make bigger holes.
Yes. And then guess who's going to help you through a trauma like that? Not your friends and family. They can't handle that level of trauma. So eventually you have to trust again and see another therapist, which is the last thing people want to do. Or
Right.
maybe a pastor if it was vice versa. But I did eventually have to do that. I knew I had to. I mean, I was just in survival mode. I'd never been groomed and abused before in my entire life. Been abused, but had never had anybody slowly, intentionally build a relationship with me in order to trap me and then take advantage of me. It's just absolutely brutal. And you're an adult, so you don't feel like you're even allowed to be a victim. Speaking of that, I have this software that, because I've written a book that shows how many people search for certain keywords on Amazon books. And over 6,000 people a month are still searching, not only when therapists abuse clients, but can adults be victims? If 6,000 people a month are typing in, can adults be victims? There's a lot of adults out there suffering that not only did they go through the trauma and the betrayal, but they don't even know if they are allowed to call themselves a victim because society's not going to.
Right.
People are going to roll their eyes at that. They're going to call it a mutual affair. There's a few people that are knowledgeable and that will understand that. But it's just another thing that causes shame. And it's another reason you don't want to come forward to punish these perpetrators because of what you have to go through, because
Right.
of the name calling and the finger pointing. And yeah, it's just, sorry, I got a little fired up about that. I don't even remember what you asked me, but
Oh, no, you're good.
it's so sad to me. And that's why I came forward, because I was just wanting to say, hey, I think I'm a fairly intelligent person. I'm an adult. I feel like I'm a fairly normal person. And this happened to me. I can't even believe it did, but it did. And I want other people to be able to forgive themselves because there's a lot of shame associated with that.
Well, probably because you want to know, how didn't I see it? How did I miss the signs? Was I gullible? Was I this? Was I that? But you can't blame yourself because, like you said, it seems like a friendship. It's literally forming a relationship that you don't even know you have because they're good at it. They're so good at it.
Yeah, and they don't make another move until they know you're okay at this level. And they wait, there's enough time in between. And he even admitted to that, to slowing down when maybe I was starting to get anxious, and then speeding back up when he could. I mean, and they usually have hundreds of victims. And he, what's really sick is that I learned from the other victim that he was creating these multiple parts. And I figured it had to be for his own benefit, because why would we do this for hours and hours? If he was only trying to take advantage of me, why were we doing all this weird therapy? And it was for his own sexual gratification, that he create all these young girls and name them. And I didn't, thank God I got out when I did, because she was in for, I think, 15 or maybe 17 years. And choose which part he wanted to act with, if you get my drift. Maybe a 6-year-old that he named, I'm just making it up, Susie. So it was really sick and twisted, meaning he's a danger to children.
Right.
But yet he's never going to have to register as a sex offender because what he did isn't even considered a crime in our state. Unethical, yes. A crime, no.
That's just insane.
But yet, it gets me fired up because I think about, and I'm not saying that this is not a big deal, but say like an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, that person might get put on the sex offender list, but like predators like this that hurt hundreds and hundreds of women get a slap on the wrist, or maybe they get their license taken away. But yeah,
it's not enough.
It's not enough. One of the medical board investigators told me that I might have a criminal rape case, even though there was no intercourse. But based on the things I had shared, he said, you have a pretty strong case. You might have a criminal case. And so my husband and I went to 2 or 3 different attorneys and got advice on this. And I was told by all of them, this was a quote from one of them: do not pursue criminal charges because it will be brutal for you and your family, and he will walk. And after all the trauma you've been through, you can't even afford to take on any more trauma. And, so that's another sad reality. I call it the unjust justice system. Although I know they do good in some regards, what you will be put through to be put on the stand to try to, speak up against someone like that.
You have to relive it.
Unconscionable. Yeah, I had to go for my civil suit, my medical malpractice suit. My deposition was about 6 hours long. And the entire time the defense attorney was trying to rattle me, upset me, make me angry, make me seem crazy. And their whole defense was along the lines of, oh, you were already screwed up. The damage this guy did didn't cause like any of your problems. And so,
oh hell,
it was so wrong. I thought, how do these people sleep at night? How do you treat other human beings like that and sleep at night? I don't know. Like I said, it was that deposition alone was almost not worth going through the civil suit. And so I always warn other victims, yes, there is some healing and standing up for yourself and fighting for yourself, but just know there's going to be damaging in certain ways as well. So you just have to be prepared for that.
Yeah, they're going to air out all the dirty laundry. They have to, because then they're going to try to put it back on you to act like you wanted it.
Oh, yeah. And everything that you've never wanted the world to know then becomes public record. It's just horrifying. I mean, I remember mailing my diary, to my attorney. And I saw a therapist at one point. I did a year of EMDR therapy. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's used for trauma. She got really angry when she got a request for my medical records for the civil suit. Well, everybody got that. My dentist got a request for my medical records. And I said, I got so upset. I was like, this is not exactly convenient for me either. People, like, I'm sorry you have to fill out a form, but yeah, it's a lot.
What do they need to know about your teeth?
I don't know. I mean, I literally was like laughing. I was like, the dentist called me. We have an attorney. I'm like, just give them whatever they want. Like it was so embarrassing. It's like, what are they thinking? Like about me, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I have my wisdom teeth. I don't know. Just tell them whatever they need. I don't know. I've had one filling. I don't know. Because anything they can do to make you look bad, to embarrass you, to shame you, to make you look unstable, anything, they are looking for everything. So
that's crazy.
But don't ask me. It was funny.
So you said you had childhood trauma as well. Was that not grooming techniques that wasn't being used when you were younger?
No, well, I mean, it was being used, but meaning like one-time incidences, or I had some repeat abuse by a family member, which you could probably say there was some grooming involved, but I wasn't really old enough to understand that. I wasn't old enough to, really become attached to another person and form a relationship with them. And then, there was like a swim coach. That was a one time, a massage therapist. I went to a doctor in my early 20s, a gastroenterologist, I remember, who did a full, very uncomfortable breast exam. And I knew it was wrong. But again, I'm just laying there feeling, you can just feel the energy. And I remember in my head thinking, this is so awkward, but don't make it more awkward. Just pretend, just act normal, as if I'm the one to blame for the discomfort in the room. And I remember I told my boyfriend about it, but that was it. And I read in the paper that he ended up losing his license because somebody reported him. But yeah, just, things like that, just things, but never somebody that I grew to care about and that I grew to trust and grew
Right.
to love in a sense of not a romantic love, but a loving, caring type relationship is what
Right.
I meant.
I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't know if it was kind of like mirrored. Well, obviously not, but
Well, childhood abuse sets us up for, vulnerability to predators. It does not mean that we caused it, or does not mean that, because I want, listeners to know that abuse will never, ever, ever happen without the perpetrator. It is not what we are bringing to the table from our childhoods does make us more susceptible in ways, largely because it takes away our voice and our ability to say no, and our ability to say, like, these are my boundaries, and you're not allowed to cross them, because when you've had those crossed as a child in such an egregious way, you don't really even know what your rights are, if that makes sense. When something's happening to you that you think it's wrong, it feels wrong, but you don't know if you have the right to say anything or do anything about it. If it's especially if it's an authority figure.
right.
So in a way, it's not that it mirrored, but it was similar, because it was a father figure then, it was a father figure now. So the same weakness or whatever, the same void in me played a role. So, but therapists, you're sitting duck in a therapist's office. They can learn all of your weaknesses and all of your voids. They're supposed to. And so if you're with a sociopath, then they can use all that information they find out against you, which is why I want therapist abuse legislation to be passed here, because you are not protected in those spaces. You just hope that you got a good one, because the therapy office is a private setting where you should be vulnerable. That puts you at a lot of risk. I feel like isolation is, one of the biggest dangers, because and predators in any relationship or any area will try to isolate their victims, because they know if you stop sharing with other people, that they've got you. And the way the way that worked with me was the therapy was so weird that I didn't want to tell anybody. It was like, I thought it was helping me, and I thought it was a God thing, and I thought it was like a good thing, but it was weird and embarrassing. And so I started keeping more and more secret, right? And started keeping more and more to myself. And then pretty soon you find yourself alone on an island with just the abuser, and you've kind of stopped sharing with other people, and that distance grows and grows. Does that make sense?
Yes. That makes total sense.
Yeah. And like my sessions got longer. I didn't want to tell anyone that. I liked it though. It was weird at first. It scared me at first, but then I liked it. I liked having more time, and I liked that he liked working with me. So you think, I'm not going to really tell my best friend that. And so you just start keeping more and more secrets. And as that's happening, the attachment is growing. There's so many layers that are going on all at once that it's so confusing to see. And even when I got out, I had to write a book, not even because I was going to share my story, but I just had to understand what happened. I thought, how on earth did this happen to me? And yeah, it took a lot of writing and a lot of years to really be able to untangle it and see, okay, that's what he did. And, that's how it was all working together.
The name of your book is Preyed Upon.
Upon a because that's, I trusted him because he was this Christian leader, and the A is crossed out and an E is written in.
If somebody wanted to get the book, where could they find it?
My website is www.amynordhues.com. It's on Amazon and really anywhere else books are sold. It's in ebook, paperback, and it just came out an audiobook. And it's on Audible and as well as every other platform that sells audiobooks. Or it should be soon. It just got released on those platforms.
That's exciting.
I know, I'm excited. I loved how it turned out. I loved the narrator. I think she really brings the story alive. So I'm excited.
Well, good.
Just for all those busy people that are always driving and don't have time to read a book.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be available, to any victim that it would benefit. So.
No, absolutely. I mean, obviously you are not alone. This is a big thing. And I think maybe if somebody also is wondering, like, is that what's going on in my life? Because there's some things off. So maybe they'll be able to pick up some things that you went through and say, yep, that's exactly what's happening here.
Yes, I so highly recommend they read the book, but because it helps so many different people that have been in abusive marriages, relationships. It's not just about therapy abuse, and it's not just about clergy abuse. Any scenario where that happens and how predators work kind of gives you a bird's eye view of up close of how they perform they weave their web, I guess, and how we allow it to continue. And then how we have a hard time leaving and why we have a hard time leaving. Because a lot of people think, well, why didn't you just leave? Well, they make sure that you're not going to leave before the abuse goes too far.
Right.
Did I say that in a way that even makes sense? They make sure you are very attached, would feel too guilty to leave, would feel you couldn't survive on your own if you left, would feel too embarrassed to tell. And that's when they can really take advantage of you because they know they have you.
They can pull the whole, no one's going to take care of you like I will.
Correct. You will not have a connection like this with anyone else ever. It's just this magical connection that we have.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that consent cannot be given ever in a relationship with an imbalance of power. Therefore, you cannot consent. If you are in a relationship, you cannot consent to your therapist, to your doctor, to your pastor. These people hold all the power. You do not hold any. A lot of people think that these things are, mutual and that you must have wanted to participate. But the truth is that people in positions of power can take advantage and manipulate us. And it happens all the time, men, women, all different scenarios. And that's just something that I really want victims to hear, that you can't say yes if no was not also an option. And, a lot of people are taken advantage of by their employer, a lot of times in the church. And so they can be fired. These people hold things over you.
Right. That way you stay.
So you stay because maybe you lose your job, or maybe, they would share things about you and lots of other reasons.
Right. I like that. I've never heard that before put that way. So it's just like, oh, I like that.
It isn't possible. And I think if everybody really thinks about it, they would get it, because it's like, you can't just think about like your relationship with your boss at work. They have power over you. It's not an equal relationship. And a therapist client is definitely not an equal relationship. The therapist has all the power. You have none. They know everything about you. You know nothing about them. But yeah, I do like that too. And there's one other thing I wanted to share.
Sure.
After my abuse, I spoke with a really wise psychologist, and he asked me if I had shared all of this with my husband. And I said, yes, I told him everything. And he said, well, that's a shame, because the first thing I do when I sit down with couples in this situation is share with the spouse, your wife was a victim of a crime, and victims don't know explanations, period. And if you think about that, we give that to victims of certain crimes, We know if you're out jogging and someone grabs you out of the bushes and assaults you, we know that you were a victim. But if you are in a, say, a counseling setting or coach, any kind of mentoring setting, and you're an adult and you end up getting taken advantage of, good luck convincing society that you were a victim. And sadly, that kind of abuse where there's a relationship built and trust is given is that much more devastating. The betrayal is just that much greater. And that's just another big reason that I share my story, is that I want other victims to know that is, the burden to prove ourselves or explain ourselves is not on us. People can believe us or they can not believe us and judge us. It doesn't matter. We were victims of a crime and we don't owe anybody anything. If we want to pursue avenues of justice, we can. You don't have to. That is not your burden either. You don't have to go up against the predator if you don't want to. It's your right. And adults just don't get that grace. Do you agree?
I do.
When you hear about it on TV, a lot of people roll their eyes at the people that are claiming that they were victimized. It's embarrassing to come forward with that. That isn't something that you're going to make up.
Right. Well, some people unfortunately do, and they ruin it for everybody else.
What do you mean? Oh, yeah.
They call abuse and they
and I know that everything happens in the world, so I know that happens too. It's just sad because so many victims have to keep it hidden for fear of judgment, and so they don't get the help they need.
Right.
And keeping it a secret doesn't do anything but make it grow and make the shame grow bigger. Yeah, that's probably all.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, you're welcome. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
As fun as I guess it could be,
fun
right?
Visiting subject,
Okay, if you guys are interested, you can find the link to her website and the book in the show notes below. If you know somebody that could benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Make sure that you follow, subscribe, leave a 5-star review on either Apple or Spotify. And don't forget crimeovercocktails.com. I have a lot of useful phone numbers on there if you're in need for help. All right, you guys, thank you for listening, and we will talk crime another time. Bye.